Hello everybody and welcome to a brand new Elder Scrolls Online build video with me, Sherman. Today guys, we are taking a look at the Blizzard PvP Ice Warden build for Murkmire. That's right, it's an Ice Warden, and it is a light armor build too, so don't be surprised when you see the resistances. This thing's got a lot, and it's pretty crazy how powerful this build can really get to for being a light armor build, and I have to say, I'm really surprised that I actually got to pull it off. So let's go ahead and get started with it. We are an Argonian Warden for this, and there's a reason why we are Argonian. They get some extra damage mitigation stuff that allows them for greater survivability when you're playing in PvP. I do play a Nord, unfortunately, on live, so it's a little different. And I don't have any gameplay yet, but I will have some gameplay here within a week of me doing some PvP with my Blizzard build in the live game, so I'm going to show that one off because I really like this build. In fact, I love this build. It just works out so well. Now, with being an Argonian, we do get 3% max magicka, so our magicka is coming in at a 30k. Not too high, not as high as some people would like, but I do love this setup. I find it to be probably one of my favorite setups for PvP. We do have 64 points into magicka. I even have that on my Nord. As you can see, our magic recovery is coming in at 1492, kind of low, but also we have a lot of things giving us extra recovery for this build, and it's just so powerful. It's ridiculous. Our max health is coming in at 26k, and then when we get the 10% bonus, we go to 28k max health on this build in PvP. Just overall really, really good. We do have a 2387 spell damage, and there's some things you can do to tweak this if you want, but I really like having that higher spell damage, 2387. And when we're buffed up, guys, we actually get, I do this every time, we go up to 2864. We actually have over a 4k spell damage with this build. It is crazy, crazy powerful with our ice abilities. So we have a 40% spell crit, not quite as high as some people would like, but it still works out really well. We have a 16k spell resistance with a 15k physical resist, and when we buff up with that as well, we go to 22 spell and 20k physical. And like I said, light armor build, guys, lots of resistances, and we have a whopping 2089 critical resist. Really, really good overall setup for this build, to have that good spell resistance, that good physical resist, and that good critical resist. Man, overall, this thing's just a mitigating beast. Also, being a Warden, you get a lot of other ways of mitigating more damage through damage reduction. So, and we'll get to that when we get to skills. We are running the Apprentice Mundus Stone with this to give us that extra spell damage. We are in Cyrodiil right now, so this is what this is going to look like in a CP Cyrodiil. No CP Cyrodiil, we go to a 28k magicka, 26k health still, really still overall good. You don't really need that much, but I don't want to give anything up. So, and your recovery does drop in no CP. Spell damage, spell crit still about the same. I think you go to a 30%, just about. I think it's 32% spell crit in no CP. So, not quite as well. I like to, when I go into no CP, I do like to equip Inner Light, so I get that extra spell crit. So I still have that 40% spell critical. And then we are running Witch Mother's Potent Brew. Now there is another food, a gold food, but I can't afford it on the live servers. It's too damn expensive. So I just run Witch Mother's Potent Brew, but the other food is better. It does give you more magicka, more health, and magicka recovery plus health recovery. So overall, a much better food than this, but Witch Mother's Brew still works for me. Alright, moving on now to the gear. Now, the pots I run on live are actually the ones that give you spell crit and magicka return. So I don't know the name of them, but that's the ones I use. They work out really well, and being an Argonian, no matter what potion you're using, you do get the Argonian potion passive, so you get all 3 resources back, regardless of the potion. So I'm still getting resources back. It's not as much, but it still adds up really fast. So alright, now the food we are running, like I said, again, Witch Mothers. You can use the other food, it's up to you. Now let's go over the sets. starting with the main set, our monster set, and I say our main set because this pretty much is my main set whenever I make an ice build, and that is Ice Heart, guys. One piece is spell crit. 2 piece. When you deal critical damage, you have a 20% chance to gain a damage shield that absorbs 4,300 damage for 6 seconds. While the damage shield holds, you deal 1,078 frost damage to all enemies within 5 meters. This is really just kind of a pressure set. It really is. Getting that extra proc and being up close to those enemies allows you some really crazy stuff with this. So I really like this monster set. The next set we're running, everyone should have guessed, Winterborn. Insane set. This is also, you can run this same build in PvE, guys. It's pretty powerful even in PvE if you change some things around. Like go infused here, and then go with these, go both of these, or all 4 of these with the, can't even think of what it's called, like the Nerdhound, and then go with these. Like make this reinforced, but make these infused. You get a really good build even in PvE solo play. Going over the stuff here though, this set is crazy. 2-piece max magicka, 3-piece recovery, 4-piece spell damage, and then the 5-piece. When you deal damage with a cold damage ability, you have an 8% chance to summon a pillar of that deals 8,428 frost damage. This is like Vulcan Scoria for an ice mage. Okay, it's really good. It does damage to any enemy within 3 meters for that much. And the pillar persists for 2 seconds and reduces movement speed of all enemies within that 5 meter radius. I think it's a 5 meter radius, or 3 meter radius is reduced by 60%. So when you have this down, when this procs with your wall of elements and your shards and everything, like you can get this to proc, like you get tons of CC with this build. The next set is kind of an unusual one because it's, well, actually not unusual to me, but it's literally the best set for this is Murkmire. We get spell crit, we get max magicka, we get spell damage, and then we get adds 400 spell damage to your frost damage abilities. We are using nothing but frost damage abilities mostly, so getting that extra 400 spell damage on them really improves our damage overall, guys. So, and we are using 2 Murkmire staves. So going over the traits and the enchants, we are using 3 well-fitted pieces here. The helm is heavy, the shoulders medium, everything else is light here, guys. And we are using 3 infused or 3 tri-stat glyphs here with the well-fitted. That well-fitted gives us the extra reduced dodge roll cost by 15% and the reduced sprint cost by 15%. So we get like an 18% or a 30% reduced sprint cost. Or actually it's more than that, it's 45% reduced sprint cost, and I think we get like a almost 50% reduced dodge roll. It's like 48% reduced dodge roll cost. So we get a lot of dodge roll reduction, a lot of everything reduction. Overall, this thing barely uses any resources. I mean, if you look here when we dodge roll, not even 1k in our use there. Barely over 1k in our use in sprint or dodge roll, and then our sprint, you can sprint for miles with this thing. It's pretty OP. And then blocking costs us magicka because we are using dual ice staves. So on the smaller pieces, we're using Inpen with 4 max magicka enchants. Really the best setup you can go for this, and really powerful. Moving on to the jewelry, we are using 2 infused on the rings with spell damage enchants. The last thing we have is a necklace that is protective. We have that protective there to give us that 1844 extra resistances. So this gives us a lot more resistances, a lot more better overall. Now with non-CP, you got to run 2 protective rings with an infused necklace, and the necklace you want spell damage, and one of the rings you'll want to put magic recovery. The other 2, these 2 things you're going to have spell damage. So your spell damage will drop in no CP, but only by about 100 points, which is fine. It's just that you lose the 2 infused, and you get 1 protective. The reason you want the 2 protective in CP is you don't have no CP, you don't have the CP bonus for using an ice staff, which adds to your resistances. So this just boosts our resistances more. That's why we have this here, and that you can't go wrong with having good resistances on a light armor build. Moving on to the weapons. Now we do have 2 ice staves, both infused. One with a frost enchant. Yes, we have this here because it can proc minor maim, and the chilled status effect, which chilled will slow your enemies. It's a 30% movement speed reduction, I think, but it also applies that minor maim. Really powerful, so really good to have on that front bar. On the back bar, we are running a weapon damage enchant. This is where we get that almost 3k, or just about 3k spell damage when we're buffed up with this. And then when you add our 4k with our buffs, everything, we go up to almost 4k. And then with the extra 400 from Murkmire, we go to 4400. It's like 44 almost, or 4200 spell damage in total. It is insane how much spell damage this thing has on this build. So it's got a 4k spell damage, hands down. But and like I said, I play this on live. On live, though, my gear is purple here. And this is purple, my jewelry is. But these are both gold, and my monster set's golded out. So I do play this on live, guys, with a Nord. It's pretty OP. Like I said, and like probably next week, I'll probably bring a video out of gameplay. Now, let's go ahead and take a look at our skills. Remember, get your passives. It's super important to get your class passives with any build. You want those class passives. Moving on to weapon skills, destruction staff, you want the passives. You want that tri-focus here because of the heavy attack. I know it's a small shield in the Cyrodiil. It's only 1051, but even without it, like, there's no reason not to use it, because while the frost staff is equipped, blocking costs you magic instead of stamina. That's why we want that. And then down here, ancient knowledge also gives you that. When frost staff is equipped, you block for less, and you also increase the amount of damage blocked by more. So you can block with this, and you can mitigate a lot of damage. Moving on to the armor passives. Light armor, get all the passives, especially Grace. This is really important. This reduces your sprint cost by 15%, and it also reduces your the effectiveness of snares applied to you by 4% for each piece of light armor. So 20% on the snare reduction and stuff like that. It's really good. Medium armor, you want all the passives, especially the bottom one. This one, because of the dodge roll passive. Remember, we have those 3 well-fitted. And the 3 well-fitted with that dodge roll really helps out. Heavy armor, you want all the passives. World skills, you don't really need anything. People say to be a vampire with this, you don't need it. The 10% magic recovery is nice, but you really don't need it, because that fire damage you take is going to just kill you, especially if you're an Argonian. You only need Mage's Guild passives, and the only one you need here is the Magicka controller. Now, when I play PvP in no CP, I do run Inner Light, and I still run Ice Comet, but I also run Degeneration instead of the Blue Betty. And the reason I run Degeneration instead is because Degeneration gives me a small heal, and in no CP, you need all the healing you can get. So this really helps out. I know I lose the removing a negative effect, but in no CP, being an Argonian, which we'll get to in a second. Undaunted, you want Undaunted Metal. You can use Psijic Order abilities, by the way. You can use Accelerate or Time Freeze if you want. Right here, where Harness Magic is, you can use that instead. And then if not that, another good one is the Race Against Time. This is a really good one to use in PvP. This reduces your sprint costs by 50% for 3 seconds, but it also gives you minor force, increasing your critical damage, and increases your movement speed. So it's a nice way to get an increased movement speed and stuff, but it also increases your critical damage, so you can get those heavy attacks off with better damage. It also helps with your healing. Or not your critical damage. This helps with just your damage. But what I mean by healing is it allows you to get away so you can heal. So Race Against Time is another one you can put where Harness Magic is. We'll go over that in a second. We don't use any alliance skills, but onto the racial passives. Now, the reason I chose Argonian, there's a special reason. First off, resourceful. You get Magicka recovery, or increase max Magicka by 3%, so that really helps. But when you drink a potion, you restore 4,620 health, magic, and stamina. Now, like I said, on live servers, I use the Magicka pots that give me the crit, and give me the Magicka return, and I think it gives you mag recovery as well. but it gives you, like, in total, 10k magicka back, plus 4k health and stamina. And actually it gives you more health because you do get healing received of 10%. So you, or 15% almost, or 14%, something like that. So you get a lot of healing received, and that applies to that potion too. So the healing received boosts that heal to like 6k almost. And then you get the stamina back. So really good for potion use. Next off, the Argonian Resistances. Gives you max health of 9%, but it makes you have poison and disease resistance. Extra 1485. Now, if you don't know where this 1485 applies, it applies to your physical resistance, guys. So that gets up boosted from the 16,000 or 20,000 to 2k. Actually goes up to 23k because of certain things within the math that the game does. I don't know. You end up with about 23k physical and physical resist because of on poison and disease. So really good. But again, you also gain immunity to poison and disease status effects, which a lot of people use in Cyrodiil, especially gankers and Nightblades and dual wielders across the board will use poison enchants, disease enchants. This helps you be immune to those status effects. That's why I like the Argonian. And then next up we have Quick Demin, increases healing done and healing received by 5%. So really good overall. It boosts those heals. And you do have some heals here on the build, which we'll get to. Alchemy, you want to get medicinal use, especially in PvP in Cyrodiil. This makes your potion cast, like recast time, really quick, so you can keep those coming in, keep those things coming in. And the reason why I use on the live servers, I use the magic recovery with the magic crit, is because I want to boost my crit so I can make my ice heart proc more. Provisioning, Gourmand and Connoisseur, because all it has to do is crit. That's all you want to do is crit. You don't want to do critical damage, you want to crit. And even if you do critical damage, it still does a lot of damage. It just doesn't do the critical side of it, like, or do as much in the critical side. So you still do a lot of damage with it. And Gourmand and Connoisseur, definitely another thing, because you want that food to last as long as you can in PvP. Because there's times, like in PvP, where if you're not paying attention to your food, you lose it. So having it last for 2 hours and 20 minutes helps. Alright, now going over the skills, guys. Starting with the first skill on our bar, we do have Crushing Shock. We have this here because it does do a lot of damage. I'm going to go ahead and buff up with my thing here, so I can show you the skills, and this way you can see the actual damage. So this does 3k damage, by the way, in ice, and then about 2,300 or 2,300 flame damage and shock damage, which is really good. But the main part about this is enemies hit while casting are interrupted, set off balance, and stunned for 3 seconds. It's a nice CC, really good. Next up, we have Elemental Drain. Now, a lot of people are going to ask, why are you using Elemental Drain in PvP? Because I want to get the highest amount of penetration I can with my build. Now, most people in PvP are running around with the 17k resistance when they're buffed up, or when they're unbuffed. So if you can hit them with this, and then hit them with one of your most powerful attacks you have, you're going to do a lot of damage. And that's your Crushing Shock. You hit them with this Crushing Shock, you're going to get max pen almost on them, and strip them of all the as much resistance as possible, and do as much damage as possible. So that's why we keep this up as much as we can. This is more for singular fight, like individuals that you want to take out. Like if there's a tank, you want to put this on them. If there's a DPS, you know, and a tank, you're going to put this on the tank first, kill that tank, then drop the DPS. Unless that DPS has a lot of pressure on you, then put it on them. You can drop them really quick and then move on to the tank. It just allows you that greater penetration. Remember, we're in light armor. When you look at what light armor does, we get concentration. This increases our spell pen by 4,888. This applies to spell pen by 5,280. That's 10k right there. And with our CP, we go to 13k penetration. So really powerful overall. Now, a lot of people say the Lover's Mundus Stone would be good for this build. No, you don't want it. you don't want it. This you get enough. The next ability we have is Arctic Blast. I know Arctic Blast isn't that great because you have to target an enemy, but the heal on it is really good. because it does hit you for a pretty decent amount. It does heal you over time. The heal over time is only like 500, but it's still pretty good. And then the target enemy stunned for 3 seconds. Now, I like to use this when I'm kiting around trees. I'll usually do like this, and then I'll back around the corner, wait for the enemy to come around it, and then I'll hit them with that Arctic Blast and stun them while they're in it, so they keep taking that ticking damage, and then I just Crushing Shock them. Crushing Shock, Light Attack, Crushing Shock, they go down pretty quick. Next ability I have on my bars is Shimmering Shield. This is here for the absorption of 3 projectiles, but it's mainly here for that major heroism and the magic restore, because this is great for that. You get 595 magic back, you get major heroism, and the 3 ultimate every 1.5 seconds. You want this, and you want this to go off as much as possible. So this is something you're going to want to recast and keep up as much as you can. That's why we have a decent magic recovery with this ability. And then last but not least, we do have Living Trellis. You will be keeping this up. Another thing you keep casted on you all locked is this. The main reason why we use this is our main heal. So this, every time we get hit, we heal. Every time it expires, we heal for more. It's just really powerful. Really good for a heal. Another ability, if you want to use it, it is an animal companion or a green balance ability, but you can use this. Enchanted Growth. It's another really good heal. It'll also give you some extra magic recovery and stam recovery, so kind of nice there. Get that 10% on both of them, and it does apply to with your pots. So since I'm using tri-pots with this right now, I get 10% or 20% stam, 30% stam, 30% magic recovery if you use Enchanted Growth. Enchanted Growth is a really good heal, but this is better for this build. Next up, Ice Comet. Really good. Lots of damage, guys. Lots of damage, not gonna lie. And it stuns enemies, and it knocks them back, and reduces their movement speed. It's a crazy CC. Like I said, this build has a lot of CC, lots of damage over time, lots of everything. It's a really good mix of stuff. But the thing you have to understand about frost damage is it does not do as much as fire damage. It doesn't do as much as lightning damage. It is the weakest of all magic damage types. But it's tons of CC and crowd control, and that's what makes this so good. So, yes, definitely good here. Now, moving on to the back bar, where we have our Blockade of Frost, another CC, guys, damage, and chilled enemies become frozen and are immobilized for 4 seconds. Again, more CC. Wow, what are you doing? So lots of CC. Next up, we have Winter's Revenge. This is OP as heck with this build because it does frost damage. And I do want to show this too on these 2 abilities so you guys can see we have those. These go up to 23. So 2,310 frost damage. This does 2,386 frost damage with total spell damage buff. These things do like 3k damage each almost, and it's just insane. On top of that, both of them are CCs. What is going on here? So yeah, really good CCs. And then when you add in like Ice Comet, even Crushing Shock, and this, you've got a lot of stun, you've got a lot of that. But next up, we do have a shield. Now, it's a minor shield. It's not a very, very powerful shield, but we have this here for one reason. It does mitigate damage, but every time you absorb magic damage, you get magicka back. So it's really good against those magic DPS types and stuff. Now, another thing you can put back here if you want for this, instead of using the light armor passive, you can use a few guild skills. You can use mage's guild skills. You can use degeneration if you want to get an extra heal. You can use the Undaunted abilities, Time Freeze. You can use Race Against Time. You can even use the Imbue Weapon if you wanted to. Or if you were really crazy and wanted just something there, you could even use Meditate. It's not a wise choice, but it is something you can do. And if you do use any of these, make sure you use these things. These things are also really, really important because you get a shield, you get this. Just good overall. Next ability we have is the Blue Betty. We have this here because of the immense amount of magic return it does now, and the fact that it gives you major sorcery, and it also removes one negative effect on yourself. So, and you can cast this in as much as you want to remove negative effects. So this is really good to purge, you know, yourself of chilled, ice, because you're not going to be affected by poison and disease status effects. You're immune to them. So. Next up, we do have Ice Fortress. This is here for the Major Ward, Major Resolve. That increase of physical and spell resist, 5,280. Like I said, really high resistance is 22k. Can't beat it. And with the shields that you have, you know, even though they're minor shields, this one's like 5k. Yeah, and then your Ice Heart's hitting for about 4,000. And then if you are using the heavy attacks, you're going to get a small shield. You can get like 9k, or yeah, like 9k shields with this all together, or 10k. And then this also gives you minor protection, reducing the damage you take by 8%. Now, this does apply to your shields, apparently. A lot of people have said. I don't notice the difference. So, like shield strength in PvP. But that 8% does apply to that, but it also applies to your damage reduction. You want to keep this up a lot. Or before it comes off, you want to keep it up. So constantly I'm doing this. Like whenever I see the timer or something down there get low, I'm just like, okay, it's getting low, boom, I'm going to cast it again. And I keep it up all the time because I like that mitigation this offers. Now the next ability is another great ability for mitigating, ceasing everything, and that is Permafrost. Probably the best ability that you have as an Ice Warden, because this does 4,488 frost damage every 1 second for 8 seconds to enemies around you, reducing their movement speed by 70%. You also gain major protection, you and your allies within the circle, for 30% damage reduction. And then on top of that, damaging an enemy 3 times with the storm will stun them for 3 seconds. Now, the nice thing is if you don't know much about this ability, when you use that and that stun, if an enemy is in there and it takes 3 times, they stun. Another person's in there, the next tick, they will get stunned. So because see, they've already been hit 3 times. So on that 4th tick, it will stun them, and then it does it to the next person. It's really, really OP, and it's a good CC. I use this when I'm in towers because, like, if you're going to go into a tower, you pop it, and then you stand by the side of the door. So when they run in, they come around that corner. A lot of times people run in and they come around that corner. When they do, they're getting hit by that. But I also, when I have it up, I also have this and this sitting there as well. So there is a ton of immovable stuff that really CCs people and locks them down in that doorway, and it makes it a great choke point for, you know, your DPS to sit there and just pelt the crap out of them when you're in PvP. So that is Permafrost. Great ability. Now moving on to CP, guys. This is where things get a little awkward because people are used to my solo builds, they're used to my PvE builds, not PvP. So getting into here, we have 56 in Ironclad. This reduces direct damage taken from direct damage attacks by 20%. We do have 10 into Spell Shield. This increases our spell resist by 1,000. We are in light armor. You want to boost your resistances as best you can. If you can put more into this, go ahead and do it. But try to keep 40 into spell resistance. This gives you that 1,057 critical resist. You want that critical resist. So I put 40 into here for that. Moving on, we have 10 into light armor focus. This increases our physical resist in light armor by 1,000. You have to be wearing 5 pieces to get this bonus, so make sure you have that. 31 into thick skin. This reduces damage from damage over time effects. Remember, we're only being affected by fire, chilled, by burning, chilled, and concussion. So those are the ones that we're going to be affected by. We have already got lots of duration stuff because we're in 5 pieces of light armor, 20%. But this reduces the damage we take by 13. And this does stack with Hardy and Elemental Defender. The bleeds, that's a problem. We use that Blue Betty, purge it. I'm not really worried about burning and chilled when I'm affected. Or concussed. I'm more worried about, well, concussed I am because of the off balance, but anything else. Now this Hardy, 43 points, reduces physical poison disease damage by 10%. And then Elemental Defender, we have 43 points, reducing Flame Frost Shock and magic damage by 10%. The nice thing about having this up to 10% is we also get an additional 8% from the Ice Fortress, which takes us up to 18% damage reduction. When you add in this 13, that's a 31% damage reduction. And then this goes up to 38% damage reduction. So with those, and then you add 30% from Permafrost, yeah, you get a lot of damage reduction with this build. It's crazy powerful. And by the way, at 22k resistances, I think we are looking at, I'm just gonna look because I'm trying to remember what it is, and in PvP I think it's still the same. Oops. So we have 22,000 divided by 660. So we have a 33% damage reduction, or damage mitigation with resistances, and then you add in all that damage reduction. So you mitigate a lot of damage with this build, like I said. So moving on over here, we have 37 into quick recovery. Being an Argonian, we actually have a 14% healing received, guys. So that's a lot of healing received for this build. That's why we use the Arctic Blast and the other one, is because that gives us 2 tick heals, and it really keeps our health boosted up. And by the way, when our health is boosted up, we go to 28k health. So lots of mitigation, lots of survivability on this build. Moving on over to the green tree, we have 44 into Warlord. This reduces our break free cost by 17%. It's all about saving resources in PvP, guys. We have 25 into Sprinter, reducing our sprint cost by 15%. Remember, because we are in light armor, we get another 15% reduced sprint cost. So we actually have a 30% reduced sprint cost in total. So we can sprint for miles. On top of that, we can also dodge roll like crazy. We have 7 into Siphoner. I didn't have a lot of places to put 8 points. I did the math. I broke it down and tried to put it into different places, and I could spread it out, but I would still end up with like 1 or 2 points left. So I decided to put 7 into Siphoner. This is when you deal damage with light or heavy attacks, you decrease the enemy's magicka and stamina recover, resource restore, and health, magic, and stamina resource restore by 2.6%. It's not a lot, but it does. You do notice it. We have 23 into Bashing Focus. This reduces our bash cost by 14%. And then moving on over here, we have 43 into Arcanus. This increases magic recovery by 10%. 43 into Tenacity. This increases magic and stamina. Return of our fully charged heavy attacks, mainly magicka, by 10%. And then moving on over here, we have 28 into Shadow Ward, reducing our block cost by 12%. Remember, we are using a Ice Staff with the Ice passive. So blocking costs us magicka, and it's actually reduced by, with this, I think it's 48%. So almost 50% reduced cost. And then we have Tumbling 56. This reduces dodge roll by 20%. We are wearing 3 well fitted, so we actually go to a 35%. And then we actually have 4% for wearing 1 medium. We go up to a 39% reduced cost in our stamina. And then you add in the block cost, or the dodge, the sprinting, everything. Lots of resource management with this build. Moving on to the blue tree, we have 19 in the blast because we are an Argonian. 19 points gives us 5%. We have 5% for being an Argonian. We actually get 10% healing done with this build. Really powerful. We also have 23 into Elfborn. This increases our critical damage and critical healing by 10%. That's why I said if you use Accelerate with this, you'll get that extra 10% critical damage. It applies to this as well, so you can get that extra crit damage if you want. It's kind of nice. And then over here we have 43 in Elemental Expert. This increases our Flame, Frost, Shock, and Magic damage by 10%. We are a Warden, so we get 6% extra. We are not a High Elf, which a lot of people say is better. I do find High Elf to be good, but at the same time, you just don't have the survivability. So Argonian works out better. And this 16% frost damage works out. We do have 43 into Spell Erosion. This increases our spell pen by 3,564. Remember what I said, guys? This build has a lot of penetration. We have 10k from our armor and the elemental drain. With this, we go up to 13k penetration. We get a lot of pen with this build, so we can actually push our damage even higher. And with that 4k spell damage on all frost damage, which all of our abilities do frost damage, except for Crushing Shock does lightning and fire, but still, we get a lot of damage out of this build. Moving on to the middle tree, we do have 35 into Tactician. This increases your light, or increases your light and heavy attacks done with destruction styles by 20%. We do have 81 into Master at Arms, increasing our direct damage done by 24%. Together, that's a 44% increase in our light and heavy attacks. So lots of damage from this. We also get Butcher. We do not get Tactician, unfortunately. I know a lot of people like this because you want to set those enemies off balance and stuff, but I don't notice, really. Like, I do a lot of CC, so I'm not worried about knocking somebody off balance. And then over here we have 26 in the Thaumaturge. This increases our damage done with direct damage over time effects by 11%. Don't need a whole lot. That works out really well. We do still do a decent amount of damage. But like I said, if you're playing in no CP, you do lose quite a bit. You go to 29 or 28k Magicka, 26k health still. Your recovery drops, your resistances drop. So this is really good. And another thing about the red tree here, the bulwark. So this gives you an extra 1500 physical and spell resist with using an ice staff. That's how we can get our resistances up so high with this build, with just that one ring enchant. And the 10 points in each of those things. That's how we can get this build working out really well. I mean, that's a really good amount of resistances, guys. We got a really good amount of spell damage. Like I said, with the Ice Heart, or the Murkmire, and the weapon damage enchant. The weapon damage enchant is going to take us up to about 3,400. 3,500 almost, and then you add 400 spell damage, almost 4k spell damage with this build. I think when I tested it on a parse, I think I was getting 4k spell damage in total. It's crazy the amount of spell damage you have, because all your abilities do ice damage. Your light attacks, your heavy attacks, all that does frost damage, and getting that boosted to your damage overall. That 4k spell damage is insane with this build. So, but that's pretty much it, guys, for the build. I will have some gameplay videos coming out soon of the 2 PvP builds I've got going right now. The one I released yesterday, I can't even remember the name, Nature's Wrath, and this one. They're both really, really powerful builds for PvP. They work really good, especially in CP areas. No CP, they both work pretty good still. They're not great, but that's it for this video, guys. If you like it, you can hit that like button. If you guys want to see more builds by me or other videos by me, you can subscribe. Other than that, I want to thank you all for watching. Until next time, have a wonderful day, and this guy might see you in game. Also, for a bonus to you guys, if you're watching tomorrow's video, tomorrow's going to be all about hybrids and this update coming up, Murkmire, and how they've improved and how we found new ways to make them. So that's going to be happening tomorrow, and then Friday I have a hybrid build coming out. So, or Saturday I have a hybrid build coming out. So keep an eye out for those videos, guys. Thanks for watching. Bye.